Hi and welcome to the Gemhawks YouTube channel. I hope you're having a beautiful day today and a fabulous start to the new year. For the free tutorial here on YouTube today, I'd like to share with you a completely beginner accessible drop pendant. Following on from the chain tutorial of last week, it's a very similar motif. You could absolutely team these together. So let's head down to the board and take a closer look at the project, and then let's get cracking. So this pretty little pendant here, which I've threaded onto a piece of embellished rosary chain from last week. It's really easy to create and can be made with a minimal amount of material. So let's just pop that out of the way for now. I've got 5 inches of 1mm gauge or 18 gauge wire, and that's where we're going to start today. We'll just smooth and warm that through because it will help us just to get a nice fluid movement into that wire. So give that a nice smooth through, and then we'll start with our round nose pliers to create a double spiral at one end. I have checked that both of those ends are flush cut, although we might take away a little bit from the opposite end when we get there. So just pushing that circular form into the forefinger on my non-dominant hand, around and around until I have 2 circuits of wire available. Give that a squish to get some nice firmness into the design. And then I'm just going to create a right angle bend at the end so that we have a straight line, a little bit like a lollipop on the end there. What we're going to do now is pop that down for a second, and we're going to pick up our other section of wire. This is again 5 inches, and this is 0.8mm or 20 gauge wire. I'm working with medium temper copper wire today. Give that a smooth through, and I can see that I haven't flush cut this end. So once that's nice and warm and ready to work, I'll just trim away the little smidge on the end. Get that into the scrap pot out of harm's way. So I'm going to go again for a couple of rotations of wire. Whoops-a-daisy. And once that gets going around, we'll switch to some flat facing pliers. And you can again push that into the forefinger of your non-dominant hand, but this time we won't be pushing any angles away with the wire. We're just going to hold on to that for a second. Give that an extra warm through for luck, and then we're going to lay one of those spirals over the other with the smaller wire, the finer gauge wire, on top. I'm just going to pinch that very, very firmly and rotate that wire just above the angle change that we made. Now, in terms of me demonstrating today, I'm just going to go for a single wrap of wire down at the base here, and then again between each bead. But in one of my demonstration pieces, which I will put at the end of today's video, you can see that I've gone for 3 rotations of wire. You might need slightly more than 5 inches if you do that, but I want to show you with a single rotation of wire because this is a great way to use up odd scraps from your collection. So let's grab one of these beads. This is again a 6mm round bead, and I'm working with rhodonite today. So I'm just going to push that down. Now you can go for whichever face you like to see as the front side of your pendant. I'm going to go for the heavier wire spiral with the lighter wire spiral behind. The reason for that is I just think it looks nicer, but you can choose whichever one you want. The main thing here is that the 2 spirals sit flush, with the finer spiral completely hidden by the heavier spiral on the front there. So if I pinch that firmly and draw that wire across the surface of the bead, I'm moving from the top of the heavier gauge core wire, just slide that into position, to, on your screen, the underside. So from the top, across the surface of the bead to the underside of that core wire. I'm just going to push that around the core for a second. What we're looking to retain is the flatness of those 2 spirals together. That is what holds the pass of wire across the surface of the design. That's the aspect that I want to see when the pendant is being worn. I've made lots of halo jewellery over the years where the wire goes around the outside of the bead, which is absolutely beautiful, but today I want that to sit over the surface. So I've gone for a single pass of wire across the back of that core, and I'm going to add in my next bead of choice. Now I'm working with the 6mm rhodonite again because it matches in with the chain we made last week. But you can change the size of the wire. You just need a little, the size of the beads. You might just need a little bit more of that extra embellishing wire if you're going to go for lots of passes of wire between them, or if you're going to go for very large beads. So again, we're going to draw that over the surface of the bead from the top side of that core wire to, as you're looking at it on the screen, to the underside, and then all the way around again. So if I just pull that so it's upright and coming forwards from the design, we'll add in our last bead. Another joy of a piece like this is if you've got a couple of random beads, you can make a lovely drop pendant, or you can work with odd single beads if you prefer. Whatever you've got available, and it's a very inexpensive design and a very easy design to master. So I'm going to make sure that my beads are sitting nice and neatly before drawing that last one across, again from the top of the core wire across the surface of the bead to the underneath, and I'm just going to pull that away for a second. Now I know that everything is good and secure. The two spirals are flat against each other, so the pendant will hold in wear. And what we're going to do now is to create a neck and a wrapped loop up at the top to act as a bail. Now in my demonstration piece just here, I've made a very, very large bail, and that's because I wanted it to be able to pass over the stations in our Embellished Rosary Link Chain. You can make whatever size bail you desire. What we're going to do is take a look and see which is the front, so that's the one with the heavier wire. And I'm going to leave a gap of around about 6 millimeters, 5 or 6 millimeters, because I want to go for a little bit of wire wrapping to generate strength into the piece. So the angle change that we're about to create needs to be coming forwards. Let me show you. So that when I sit this down on the bench, I can see the spiral. This is the aspect I want to see in wear, and the bend in the wire that we've made is coming forwards from that. The reason that that's important is if you get that at 90 degrees, then it won't sit on the chain properly, and you'll see the side of the pendant, the side of the spirals. And what we're looking to create today is this embellished drop pendant. So let's grab those bail makers. I think I'll make a slightly smaller bail on this one, rotate that around to get the first half of that round form. You can generate your wrapped loop however you see fit, but I like to do that in 2 stages because it's easier to show to people who are newer to wire work, and it's a little bit easier to control. So you can see I've got around about 1 3/4 inches of wire remaining, and I'm just going to fill that gap with wrapping. So you may need to just bring your embellishing wire down and out the way. And let's rotate this around, and we're looking to generate a nice neat coil. Now you may find that you move things slightly whilst you're doing this, but the main point is that that loop that we're creating is at right angles to the face that we're looking to keep. If things get a little bit loose underneath, you can very, very gently pinch those together to ensure that you're seeing that wrapping on the surface of the pendant. So let's just draw this around again. And all I'm looking to do here is to fill the gap with the tail of wire that we have available. Now if you overestimate the distance between the last bead and the angle change where we create that bail, you may run out of wire. If that happens, don't worry about it. We're looking to keep it as smooth as possible. When you start getting towards the last little piece of wire here, it can get a little bit stiff, so you might like to use your pliers to generate the force you need to just bring that last little tail down. If you end up with any gaps in your wrapping, you can fix that like so. So let's give this a little bit of a squish and a little bit of a squeeze to get that finished off. If you do have a teeny tiny gap like I have today, because I said 6 millimeters and then went and put a 10 millimeter gap in, because I don't measure things very often, it doesn't really matter. If you have a little bit of a space there, we're going to cover that up with a spiral anyway. What you do want to do, however, is to make sure that that last section of wire is flush and smooth. So I'm just going to rotate those pliers around in the direction that the wire is moving. And what that does is it just smooths that last cut end so that it won't catch on anything too terribly. So let's have a look just before we put that last spiral in. What we're looking to see is the front spiral being the heavier wire. We're looking to see those passes of wire going over the surfaces of the bead, and I'll show you my other example now. I used about 10 inches to create this of the finer gauge wire. So again, the finer spiral sits on the rear side of the design, but then I wrapped 3 times around the core. before doing a pass over the bead 3 times, a pass over the bead 3 times, and then ended with a spiral. So you can see it's a slightly different aesthetic, and you use just a little bit more wire. But I'm going to show you how to finish off this design now. So what I might do, just to fill the gap that we have, just sight the front section, the pass of wire over the surface of the bead, make sure that's where you want it to be, and then I'm going to bring that tail of wire around a couple of times just to fill the gap. And I still have 1.5 inches of wire to play with. Now just checking, that is flush cut, so we're going to grab those round nose pliers, start that circular form exactly the same way as we did at the other end, and then just push that into the non-dominant hand and rotate that around to create a spiral which we can sit over the surface of the neck of our pendant. So let's just get that pushed all the way home, bringing that so that it sits equally and centrally at that neckline, and then we're just going to push that upwards so it sits over the surface of the neck towards the bail. So that is the crux of our ever so easy embellished drop pendant, and I'll take a photograph of that and leave it on the board for the outro of today's video. Well, thank you very much for watching today. I hope you've enjoyed this super easy, suitable for beginners project. Have yourself a fabulous day, and I'll see you again very soon. Bye for now.